get started. My name is Ashley Gorbolja Maldonado. I am the founder, or found her, if you will, and CEO of Guide on Education Consulting. I am a former higher education professional. I work for the government. I'm a business owner, and I'm also, if you have not dropped by the American Legion's podcast booth, I am a co-host for the American Legion's podcast. So I will be kind of talking about some things that will be incredibly relevant today. So you are all here for how to sustain funding for your SVA chapter now and in the future. All right, so a little bit about me. So I was very, very fortunate. I was able to run and operate a veterans program while I was at the Cuyahoga Community College while I was in Northeast Ohio. I additionally was a founder of my SVA chapter at the University of Akron and ran a American Legion post on campus. So within about 5-year time span, when we look at the whole kit and caboodle while I was there, we raised over $200,000 that we were able to either give back directly to the community, create loan and some different structures that provided emergency assistance to veterans, and additionally get our folks to NatCon, which you are all happen to be here. Anybody a first time NatCon? Yay, welcome. Welcome. I remember my first NatCon. It actually was here in Orlando Disney in this exact building. And I will tell you that the Tower Hotel, that was not there. And I'm not confusing that with the Tower of Terror. Very different things. So if you have not an opportunity to go to some of the parks, I hope that you get to. But we will go ahead and get started. So I digress. A little bit about what I do. So I'm a strategic consultant in communications. I usually just connect folks to organizations and communicate with a combined military market of about 27 million people. It is just, again, this combination of amazing things that I've been able to do with the help of both using military benefits, going to school full-time, and just all the resources that I've been able to leverage with the veteran service organization community. All right, so I'm a super nerd, and I used to teach, so there is always going to be a syllabi. So this is my version of a syllabi course overview. So we're going to talk about fundraising climate. We're going to talk about fundraising 101. That'll include some terminology for you all. The future is hybrid. How many of you are in a hybrid situation at your schools right now? Show of hands, okay. Anyone still online? Still online, okay. Anyone strictly in person? Okay, all right, so we've got a handful. I know it's been a very challenging 2 years, so it's great that you're here and you're getting all this important information. And then we will tie it all together with a pretty bow and a strategic planning hash, if you will. And then we'll talk about it at the end and we'll open it up for questions. If you do have questions, like I said, I'm gonna take them at the end. But if something is super pressing or you just want M&Ms, that is also acceptable. So we're gonna touch base on things you need to know just as a foundation work. Okay, so I love icebreakers and I'm a little nerdy. So how much does a polar bear weigh? Thank you. Ha 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 ha. This is exactly what you needed on the last day of NatCon, am I right? Okay, the fundraising climate. Ooh. About to go into the unknowns. All right. So let's check out some statistics. So did you know that nearly 1/3 of all charitable donations occur in December? Probably not. Did you know that it also happens to be the last 3 days of the year where most people will make most of their contributions just for the sake of tax deductions? Things to know. So with that being said, overall, when you look at nonprofit mobile audiences, there's a huge increase. So as we've all learned in the past 2 years, we've stared at a lot of screens. We've been asked to participate and click the button to raise our hands very politely. And what nonprofits, any foundations, and as an SVA chapter yourself working with your institution, know that mobile and the average, like between fundraising emails, you have an overall increase within the past 2 years. Facebook fundraisers have increased by 14%, and your nonprofit mobile audiences have grown by 26%. So as we're all continuing to go on our phones and make everything accessible, those are all things to think about as a chapter leader or as an advisor or anyone that is here from a higher ed institution, excuse me. All right, so starting point. So I always ask my chapters to think about these things because as you're building this plan, this foundation to better understand what you have available to you, we need to, take stock in our valuable resources on and off campus. Do we have partnerships? Do we have good working relationships with the champions or advisors that we're working with on campus? Or if I'm that campus advisor, am I working with my bursar's office or my transcript office or any of the offices that are going to help me, rally a team to make sure that my veteran population is taken care of and their families and dependents? So thinking about what your leadership capabilities and responsibilities are. Some of you are in big chapters, some of you are in small chapters. These are all things you need to consider when we get into team building to create that fundraising, what I refer to as an A-team. So again, if you have any state, university, or college or military service center rules on obtaining donations and sponsors, those are things that you want to know. So let's get into it. All right, so building a chapter brand in your community. So this is the first and foremost tenet that I bring up because it's really hard to go out in your community and say, hi, I'm this XYZ SVA chapter at my institution and we want to go to NatCon. They're like, what is NatCon? Why is it important to me? Why should I care? Who are you, right? So having a chapter brand, having, again, some of these champions that you've already taken stock and identified with, will allow you to do more in your communities. What do I mean by that? It's, like I said, it's hard to ask for money if people don't know who you are. So start thinking about what those support networks look like long-term and what resources you have. So unifying your M&Ms. All right, so special thing. So as I was working in higher education, I somehow managed to be the M&M lady. I also was called the Leslie Nope of Veteran Services, for anyone who's a Park and Recs fan. So I would always have candy in my office, and I also learned that if I kept candy in my office, I would eat the candy, and man, did I gain some weight when I started in higher ed. So now I give out candy in these convenient little packets. So if we do any interaction today, please, by all means. So drawing this together. So you have your mission and your messaging. So getting together with your SVA chapter leaders amongst yourselves while you're, of course, looking at your SVA chapter toolkit or booklet or playbook, whatever SVA is calling it. I know that you can have access to that on their website. So once you've gotten that, you look at the mission, you look at your university's mission, what resources we have, and do people know who we are on campus? Are we getting involved with other student organizations? One of the things that I came across very often is with my student service center, my veterans group kind of lived on an island. And as much as that island was really, really great, it wasn't helping the students kind of acclimate and explore other areas, right? So we come from a military environment, we say, okay, I want to find the folks that are just like me, but we also want to find folks that have similar interests and can expand upon that veteran identity to allow us to, again, move forward. So having that community brand amongst your SVA chapter and groups in your student learning centers will help you because more or less there will be, say, a fraternity or sorority that are doing fundraisers. So those are some folks that you might want to partner up with or take notes or ask how they have navigated that space and what kind of messaging they're using or have asked for assistance in the past. So that being said, the M&Ms are pretty much like your 5 W's and your H, like who, what, where, when, how. What are we doing? What do we need funds for? And really thinking about, again, who we are as a chapter, what we stand for. So that way, no matter where you're at as a chapter leader, potentially annually, some of you may hold your positions longer, that you have some form of succession plan. So you have this messaging, it stays consistent even after you've graduated from your degree. So fun fact, did you know that M&Ms were created in 1941 for soldiers to enjoy chocolate without it melting? Did not know that. Did not know that. And troops were actually the only ones able to eat M&Ms up until after World War II, going into the 50s. So we were the first, that's all I'm saying. Go Army. Whoop. Anyway, all right. So here's a fun one for you. How did pirates communicate before the internet? If someone gets this right, I'm gonna be shocked. Huh? Any stabs at it? No. That's really clever. that's really good. They argued. Well, I know I argued with some transfer and transcript offices, that's for sure. So how did pirates communicate before the internet? Peer-to-peer networking. You see, look at the answers even there. See, I'm all about subliminal messaging. We're in Disney. There's Mickey Mouses everywhere, okay? Oh, yes. Ooh. So as your chapter networks, you're going to meet new people. And as an SVA chapter leader, you want to make sure that whether you're meeting people virtually or in person, your contact list is going to grow. One of the best ways I can tell you from personal experience is make an Excel worksheet, have it on a shared Google Drive, something that lives and maintains its legacy far after you've left. Now, as you're growing your networks, think about the community partners you're working with, right? So we talked about fraternities, sororities, all of your on-campus folks, having those initial conversations, but then starting to expand outward. Have we worked with anyone from Bunker Labs? Or we have business students who XYZ want to do, I don't know, they want to be mentors for Veterati or ACP, or they want to do this stuff. How do we connect ourselves with entities that align with our mission? All right, comfortable being uncomfortable. So starting with your campus champions, so that could be, again, advisors, that could be whoever is your certifier on campus, that could be an American Legion person in your community who's assisting you, a mentor who's an upperclassman, a lowerclassman, any of the above. These individuals have to help you gauge the conversation on campus. It is unavoidable and it is a necessity. Now, painting a picture for mutual benefits in recruitment, retention, and prestige in your programming. So what I have learned, collegial networks is like this weird buzzword that higher ed folks love. I couldn't tell you how many times I put it in proposals and people are like, collegial networks, that's so fancy. And I'm like, it is. That's who we are. And they're like, whoa, right? So having like some of these buzzwords that is going to speak to your administrative or academic professionals is going to be key to opening doors for yourself, your SVA chapter, and the at-large community. So, for example, opportunities with veteran-specific nonprofits, other top university and colleges, Fortune 500 companies, seeking maybe STEM majors, for example, to drive veteran employment, and general enrollment through, like, say, co-ops, internships, scholarships. So anything that you can really show a return on investment is going to be a critical piece when you're having these uncomfortable conversations with, like, hey, we kind of want money to do stuff. And they'd be like, well, why do you need money? You're like, well, I'm a veteran. And you're like, oh, you're going to need some numbers to back it up. So another really great resource is Syracuse University has their Military Families Institute. Phenomenal. They've got one-pagers for days. They have been doing research and studies that you can pull from to showcase not only the value of you as a cohort on campus, but the diversity and inclusion. Again, all of those collegial networks, those buzzwords that are gonna get academia, ooh, this is exciting, right? Not only that, but you as GI Bill recipients or any of these other benefits, you're bringing money onto their campus, and you should remind them of that. And you can hop and skip wherever you wanna go. So having an SVA chapter allows you to have, more weight, more ammo, if you will. So, all right, so creating the A-team. Does anyone ever knows it? Okay, A-team, all right. God, I don't have to explain references. I'm not that old. So, with that being said, this would likely include your chapter president, vice president, community outreach or communications or marketing officer, finance officer. Now, again, depending on your size of your SVA chapter, you want to hone in on these folks. I typically tell people don't just make it one person, make it a team, because all too often we're already in school, we're doing the classes, we're volunteering, we're probably working, we have families, we have other responsibilities. You want to make sure that you have multiple points of contact and having some of these things dress right dress. So when folks are reaching out to you, say from a corporate entity and or another school or a small business, that you all have access to the same documents and you are sending out information that is compatible with your messaging and your mission. Additionally, checking your SVA chapter guidebook for examples. So if you're having some difficulties with wording, I highly recommend you look at each of those definitions and pull from there. So here's some examples that I used while I was at the University of Akron, creating some of these roles and positions that I also did for the American Legion roles and positions. So working with a committee appointed by the president to plan and organize fundraising activities, including developing, maintaining reports, records, institution policies, procedures, and fundraising best practices. That was something, again, all of the things that if you're gonna submit a proposal and garner a team at your institution or as an SVA chapter leader, that these are your set responsibilities. And again, these are just a few examples. So again, ensuring the chapter complies with all donation regulations set by the college or university, works to delegate tasks to committee members such as publicly donations and volunteer recruitment for fundraising events. And you can get creative with this. And you can say with each of those individual roles, establish what those person's responsibilities are to just, make it so it's just easy on everybody and it doesn't fall on one person, because we all know like life happens. And one of the things I had a really great mentor who told me is that there's a triangle, and then you have work, family, and school. And the first side when things go wrong that falls out is usually school, right? And I have had my own self and experience with SVA members who have said, hey, I've got to take a sabbatical. Like I've got some stuff going on at home, or this is what I want to do. That's why it's so important to have this A-team that's put together foundationally and have some things in writing. So if somebody had to pick up the playbook, right, just as if you were going on a mission or if you're going wherever, you want to know what that op order is. And I'm very Army, so if you know what those rules of engagement are, you have a playbook, you can proceed with mission. All right, so administrative must-knows. So if you are the fundraising individual for your chapter, take note. So according to university and your college guidelines, any documents that could be associated with your funding are often required to be kept on file in a specific amount of time. So that's like your receipts. So for example, if you're all here and you've been given like a per diem similar to like a military travel and said, hey, you have X number of dollars to spend on your lunch today, awesome. Making sure that your fundraising individual knows that, has a policy like handbook with them in the event, say crisis, right? Like anyone who's ever done crisis communications, it's a similar vibe here. But it's also important to have when you're communicating with your outside partners that you're meeting in the community. And that again can be something that you put in that playbook or your standard operating procedure book that will need to be there for, again, succession planning. So this could include, grant applications, checks, invoices, receipts. So a lot of admin, pretty basic 101 stuff. And if you do have, say, like a secretary, you would likely work with that individual very closely. Make sure that you're checking the body that's responsible for registered student organization and their guidelines. So become really good friends with your vet, I'm not assuming not your vet center, but your student life center. There will be full-timers that are there, and their job is to make sure that students do not overspend money and they delegate that money. Become really good friends. Bring them M&Ms, okay? Like, it works. I couldn't tell you how many times I have just come bearing food into certain offices, and they're just like, oh, this is so great. And the next time I need something, hey, how you doing? I got a veteran here. I need to get squared away. And you can usually use that in same roles as an SVA chapter leader. Hey, I've got XYZ here. We need to do this. Things will happen, I promise. Checking on your non-commercial policy. So this means like you can't promote or endorse products, services, or businesses or names, say of your SVA officers or maybe the Student Life Center. So this could look a little different for everybody, but knowing that what you can and cannot do is so important, and it will save you a lot of trouble, I promise. I'm telling you this because I made mistakes, people. I made mistakes. I had to sit through a lot of board meetings. So these are some specific NatCon tips and resources while we're in this. What is the fundraising climate? Here's our foundation piece. So creating that formal creating a formal or branded proposal or pitch deck. Hi, we're raising money annually for NatCon for 2023. This is the anticipated amount for, one student. We want to take 5 students. And that's something universally that can be once done and changed according to rates for hotel or wherever the conference may be. That is something that stays with the chapter. You can pull from official letterheads and branded documents to solicit donations and sponsorships. So SVA does have a downloadable template. Highly recommend you check that out. It is on their website. You also want to pull ideas from the student veterans. Specifically, this is one of those Syracuse infographics that's also on the SVA website. It's entitled A Valuable Asset to Higher Education SVA Infographic. If you want to kind of switch it up and make this kind of pitch deck of sorts, like hey, this is what we're going to do. I want to get money for this. Or, hey, we're going to do a fundraiser for whatever program we've decided or event. That all you have to do is just plug and chug. Now, I mentioned making the Excel worksheet for any of your costs, leaving room, buffers, etc. And also having an organization credit card. Your student veteran center should be able to assist you with this. So anytime you're doing an extensive travel, you have to sign off as either the president or that student chapter advisor. But making sure that you have authorized users. I can tell you that when I brought students here in 2019, they gave us one card because they would only give us one card because there was only one chapter advisor going. And I was like, well, that's not good because I need to get my president authorized. So it was upsetting, but I will say that the first day we got there, we had hit the expenditure amount. So knowing how much you can spend on that card is so important. So little things, little tips from things that Ashley has not done properly the first time. Yes.
The credit card, is that going to be something like the chapter's going to have their own bank account, or is there something to go through Bursar?
You would go through Bursar likely. Yes.
But the credit cards we're talking about is through Bursar's office?
So your Bursar's office and your student life is there should be a student life center, and maybe your college or university may not have this, but this was something that I had to work through my own personal experience at University of Akron. They had their whole student life org or center. You'd have to go in, sign all the paperwork, make sure the dotted line, you're not going to do anything ill bad that would, not benefit the university and or make them look bad. Then we would have to sign off on any financials or the total amount that they were going to give us for travel. And working through the credit card, we were able to get access by leveraging our advisor and the bursar's office, and had to create a justification for why we needed it. And we can talk a little bit more offline about what that looks like, because I'd be really interested to see who's telling you what, but we will talk more. So we're going to put it all together now. So you want to make sure that you're clarifying the goals of your SVA chapter, commitment, rallying others to support your cause. So that's your network, that's your A team. The connection, reach out across all platforms and channels, making sure that all of your SVA members know what you're doing, so that sometimes can turn out to be the social media piece, your branding, how are people getting in touch with you, so having some formality and unification in your emails, or if you're just using your student emails. So thinking about credibility, a part of your institution that you're at is going to provide some of that credibility. So when you say, hey, I'm a student from, I'll give my example, Ohio Medical University. Ohio the Medical, Or if I said Ohio or the Ohio State, people would be like, oh, okay. Go Buckeyes. No, again, no Ohio people. All right, we'll move on. Mm-hmm. So convincing, finally. So you want to build those messages and those resources to make an impact, and overall it's going to help you with your succession planning. Now again, these are all pieces that are foundational. As a chapter leader, you need to understand that you want to have this stuff in place before you start asking for money. So fundraising 101. All right, so I have a little fundraising formula here. So build a donor base. Ooh, yay. All right, creating inspirational messages to get these donors involved and have them keep coming back. And then finally, creating and executing a plan to make sure that you always bring new donors in, thank them in an engaging way, and engaging new donors and current donors that you have to make everyone feel amazing. So a lot of it's, how do you give a personal touch to whatever and whoever you're reaching out to, whether that's a foundation or an organization. So fundraising involves inviting people to be a part of something worthwhile. You are student veterans who are super high speed because you're here, right? Yes. And you're invested in your education and your employment endeavors. You've satisfied your contract for your service, whether you're deployed, not deployed, whether you're in the reserves, the guard, active duty. You have done something incredible. You are a 1%. So there are plenty of organizations out there that have some sort of philanthropic gauge or corporate social responsibility that is targeted towards veterans. All right, so types of donors. So prospects. So these are the folks, and it's not anybody minor 49er, anyone a Scooby-Doo fan? No? Okay. All right. I'm not doing too great on my jokes here. I'm gonna have to eat all these M&Ms by myself. So prospects. So prospects are people who haven't yet donated, but they're prime candidates for supporting your organization in some way, shape, or some way, large or small. These people will want to make sure that you receive will receive your mailings. So we'll talk about email marketing and how you can provide some sort of quarterly update, and whether that's, again, through your social media channels or something that if you have access and a great relationship with your student advisor and they want to say, hey, we'll do a plug for the SVA event, and also, hey, sign up for our military service center newsletter. And that would be a great way for you to then promote and cross-promote across all campus organizations and agencies and any of the academic deans. God, I'm throwing out a lot of words. So any of those individuals who could have some sort of email distro list, being able to provide them with, hey, we're doing this thing to reach different, say, academic majors. So if you have a STEM or if you have an engineering department, say, hey, we're doing this thing, you might promote it. Hey, you want to let folks know that they can sign up for our email if they're veterans, because you may find out a lot of folks who may not be identified as veterans may show up to one of your events. So prospects could also be not only your SVA members, but also on-campus folks. So ranging from anywhere from, assistant lecturers to your academic deans. So starting internal is a really great way to start soliciting for donations and or fundraising and just in general events that you're going to host as a SVA chapter. So someday, the right pieces will all fit together and they'll have a little extra money in their pocket. So this could be, hey, we're doing a donut fundraiser and we're sitting in front of the library and you're marketing it on social media. And next thing you know, you just get folks that come up very naturally and they're gonna be like, hey, yeah, I'll overpay for that donut if it means it helps veterans. Happens all the time. All right, individual donors. So these folks will likely donate to an organization for a majority of reasons. Individual donors are collectively the lifeblood of all donor base. So what do donors look like? Whether typically it's a personal donation, and these will come likely from your community or in kind from some of your academic departments, depending on, and I will say, if you can find veterans in some of your academic departments, they will be the biggest advocates for you and building those relationships. So those are just a few examples, but these folks will make up the large percentage of your annual operating income. And what that means is once you've established some communications plans, you have your M&Ms together, right? Your mission and your messaging. You have all of your branded materials with your university logo. You've got all of the infographics. You're going up to people and you say, hey, we're doing this really great fundraiser that maybe it's, we're going to Chipotle and we're getting a percentage donated back to our chapter organization on campus, or just being out at tabling events. And I know that, again, it's been a challenging 2 years, so some of us aren't in person able to do that and have the traffic to do that. So that's why we've already kind of fortuitously mentioned the mobile campaigns and why this is important in reaching folks both social media and through email marketing. So major donors, these folks will not happen overnight. And what I mean by major donors is, they will give large sums when they're ready, but usually there are some priming. And one of the quickest way to get to major donors is through any of your board of advisors or your university or college foundation, because I can tell you that they will typically have one, and they will always be hitting up the alumni. So for anyone who is or has maybe say completed their bachelor's degree, who's ever gotten an email from their alumni association, those are folks that need to be on your A team. Those are folks that are going to reach back out and say, hey, our student veterans on campus are doing this amazing thing, and now what you've done is you've opened a door to all of the past alumni at your college or university. So what we will find, and in the rare circumstance, and I'll give you an example, a gentleman that I worked with very closely, and we become great friends, and helped me start American Legion Post on campus. His name was Jay Musson. He was a Vietnam veteran, American Legionnaire, and he said, you know what, my family's actually descendants of the Bookdale College, which is now the University of Akron, and I want to make a student veteran center. How do I do that? He just reached out one day, just through the board of directors. We had put some promotion out. He said, wow, this is really great. Oh, I see a need. I would love to give back. I didn't get the welcome home. I'd love to donate a center. So we got a state-of-the-art center by just doing some simple messaging outreach on some of these cross-platforms. He would end up coming in and he says, you know what? It'd be really cool if we did a college post. And I was like, all right, Jay, okay. And I was like, who's going to do that? And he was like, just did one of those. I was like, oh, me. Okay. So next thing you know, there's a post, we've got a center, and now we have a multi-million-dollar center at our big football stadium with limited access for just our student veterans. It was incredible. And that all came from just simple asking around, going to the Alumni Association, asking the board of directors. So these major donations are, they could and can sprinkle in, but knowing again what your college and university has available to you would have been past donors, doing some cross research to see if any of them have a corporate social responsibility, in tandem with veterans or military families, very, very important. So cultivating and kind of keeping up with that stewardship is incredibly essential for achieving major donors. Corporate donors. Now, corporate donations require a completely different approach to individual, and this is for lack of a phrase, very quid pro quo. It's like, what can you all do for me in return if I give you money, right? Not all are like that, but it happens, right? Although they exist, few corporations give large donations just purely out of philanthropic. So that's why it's very important to have both a relationship with your alumni or, say, organizations who take interest in, say, I had a polymer science and engineering that was just out of this world at my campus, and we had all of these top agencies always coming to recruit. So we would go to career fairs, and we'd say, hey, we're the SVA chapter. We actually put this career fair on, so this is how we raised money. So that money that you paid to table this event, we organized and worked with our facilities and administration. So we would pocket like $10,000 from a career event like this when we would bring in corporate partners just simultaneously. So then we had their information. We knew they were interested in hiring veterans. We would give veterans an hour of prioritized time to go in with the recruiters or the HR acquisition specialist folks, and we would have these conversations. We build these relationships. We do the career fair once or twice, each semester, and then we would send them emails, hey, impact report, 20 people got hired, 20 veterans got hired, or already have interviews lined up. So again, you've got this return on investment piece that corporate donors and corporate organizations want. So they want to hire you, then you build that relationship and you say, hey, okay, now we noticed you've been a sponsor and you've been here for a while. How would you feel maybe about, sponsoring the lunch? Like say you can't get your full, whatever your catering company is on campus to sponsor or give the event at discount. Hey, how would you feel about providing lunches for veterans for the career fair? It starts there, very small. Don't ever come out the gate being like, hey, we need like 20 grand, no. Or hey, I just need like $5,000 and it's October and SVA just started and it's the first week of January. Of next year? No. So thinking about corporate fiscal year cycles and when they ask for money, or when to ask for money is incredibly important too. So it's a key area in building this cycle of giving, if you shall. So corporations should be key donors and key prospects in any of your development plans, and we'll talk about strategic plans. But you want to make sure that you figure out that fiscal year plan for your corporations in your immediate community. Like, start local. Don't go all the way up to Raytheon. Not that Raytheon isn't great and they have scholarships and they've got programs and hiring initiatives. You can do that. But also know that if you're in your local area, you've got small businesses, mid-sized businesses that are, maybe they don't throw $20,000 at you or $1,000 at that, but hey, let's do a $500 book scholarship. Like, let's set that up on behalf of our students. Foundations. So private foundations are they're like honeypots of money. So they're set aside for by a person, a family, or any other entity for donation purposes. They'll typically fall under tax-free IRS laws, and for those tax-free statuses, it requires them to give a certain amount of money away. So knowing what's in your immediate community, say what's in your county, what's in your state, start there. Start there and see who is close to home, who has, again, this immediate impact or return on investment for saying, hey, we've got veterans in this community for this type of job set we'd love to be a part of. And then it just opens the door to so many different opportunities. So with foundations, to do that, you often want to target the types of charities that are, again, interested in military interests. This could be say degree focused, this could be an industry focused. So there's a lot of ways that you can splice and dice this and get very creative with. So highly encourage you, check out foundations because they often will prefer to fund programs that accomplish their organization's mission. All right, so 10 different types of fundraising methods. So direct mail, that is, you're correct, snail mail. It works. I do a lot in the American Legion and it still works, but you have to know your audience. So if you know that your student vets are not going to be on campus or say they're going to be perusing through the advising center, you leave some strategic things, but we'll get there. We will get there. So you can do events. You have online donations, door-to-door solicitation. Again, that's probably not something you would end up doing on a college campus university, but again, another way that very commonly they do it. Email marketing, text to give, very cool enough. So I was able to work with the, what would the office go by? It was like the parking office. So if any of you have been on a campus and you get those weather alerts, or you get the emergency like, hey, this is happening alerts, there are components of email distros where you can input your text messages and opt in to get text messaging. You can do the same thing for asking for donations and tie that to your SVA chapter. And again, that's something you have to work internally with your institution. Crowdfunding, very common. Partnerships, sponsorships, and grants. And finally, peer-to-peer fundraising, which is incredibly popular and maybe one of the fastest ways many folks have been garnering money during the pandemic. Oh, it took me back there for a second. I was like, oh no. All right, so top types of fundraising ideas. So these are some things that have worked. These are some of my go-tos. These are my go-tos for the American Legion. These are just my general go-tos. So online donation campaign crowdfunding. It can be done and set up, so there's plenty of platforms that you can utilize. I would always check with your university and again, that alumni association, they may have an online page donation campaign already set up. So all of the widget, all of the back-end tech could be established. You just need to talk to the right person. Because note that if you go onto some of these platforms, they're gonna wanna take percentages. So be mindful of that. T-shirt and apparel fundraising, very, very popular. You buy a 9-line t-shirt, next thing you know, you've got some dollars that come back to you. Black Rifle Coffee does something in that similar vein. Profitable raffles, 50-50 raffles. This is something I typically would pair with a in-person event. You've got pledge events. You've got golf day. So one of the fundraisers I work on with the American Legion is a golf tournament. And I'm in Northern Virginia, and there's a lot of folks that like to play golf, and we just kind of took a survey, who's doing what. Just as you would, go back into your communities. Hey, we've got a basketball league, or we can, go support the local high school team, or again, be very creative, or go to the college basketball team. games and set up a table event, and you can set up like a jar, or you could have some sort of giveaway, you could do food. You just have to be able to navigate, again, all of that with whoever those facility directors are. So having, again, a good relationship with your athletic director is always nice, because you could raffle off tickets, you can raffle off university swag, which is nice, or your your university store or bookstore, seeing if you can somehow finagle them to give you a discount on books. That'll draw people in. People will raffle for that. Oh yeah, I'll throw up $5 if that means I can get $500 worth of books for free. It works, I promise you. So auctions, you can either do silent auctions. So again, if you have good working relationships with your community partners, and you can get like tickets to events, or excuse me, tickets to events, handmade items. I used to get things from Amish country when I was in Ohio. We auctioned off like a full bench. It was beautiful, handcrafted. We had held a military gala and ball. We would do a silent auction all the way through, solicit from local communities. So I'd have anything from nail salons to handmade benches, pottery, like canine training classes, or anything of that sort. Soliciting that, doing a silent auction, and doing raffle, charging for the ticket to come in. We'd work with facilities, and we would usually raise about $30,000 for those events. Yeah, that's wild for like a 2-year SVA chapter out the gate. And most of it was just making sure we were talking to the right people on campus. So getting the space for free, getting the food either discounted, partnering with our culinary arts program. We would just have folks come into our culinary arts, and they would do it for a discount or part of their class, extra credit or project. And then, they'd pay like $25 a head. We'd make like 15 of that would go to us. So it's another really great fundraising opportunity. You can do simultaneous events where you're getting people together. So, trivia nights, things like that, where you can pair up some of these options. And also naming rights. So if you're at a more, like, let's just go with this, a private college, typically they'll have a little bit more money. They're a lot more, I would say, generous with scholarships, things of that nature. Whenever you've seen buildings named after somebody, like, those are naming rights. So if, say, you have a Veteran Memorial Plaza, like, you could, and I've seen this done before, like where you get the engraved bricks and like you sell the bricks. Like, I know the U.S. Army Museum, when they first opened their doors just this past year or two, if you will, with the pandemic, but they're selling engraved bricks. So for any of us Army folks who are like, oh, I want to have a legacy, you can go and purchase that, and it gives back to the charity. So in the same principle, if you're at your institution and like you have like a little Veterans Memorial spot, or you want to create one, and you can have that conversation, create, again, this legacy piece where you can build that ROI, you can tell people what this impact is, you can raise money that way. All right, so the future is hybrid. So we've taken a very interesting journey thus far. We've learned about foundation of what you need to do as an SVA chapter leader, followed by your fundraising 101s, like who are we looking for, why are we looking for them, how are they aligning with our mission and our messaging. So fundraising trends, things that I have noticed more recently, and just with some overall research, is that, thanks to cloud, laptops, and mobile devices, people work and socialize and attend experiences online. So when you're thinking about how you're fundraising, thinking about how you do a virtual component to that is very important, because you will then bring in folks who otherwise couldn't be there in person, who still would want to give, which is why it's so important either to work with your alumni foundation or your bursar's office, or a combination of people that once you've identified, to help you set up something on your, say, military services website, which can be done. Preference for bite-sized content. So we live in a very goldfish mindset sometimes. I mean, I know I'm on Instagram, and I'm like, whoa. The next thing I know, like 15 minutes has gone by, and I was like, oh, Twilight Zone. But bite-sized content, we are taking in a lot of information. So thinking about how your mission and your messaging can be as simplified as possible. Like, we're doing this fundraiser X. Here's the call to action. Done. How can you make it as easy as possible without having to like do this whole story and narrative? But I will say, if you want to get creative, I have seen folks do like a multimedia projects where they're like have the stories, and they'll do some cool things, and it's worked out that way too. Schedules and other responsibilities. So supporters that would, of course, love to participate, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you're able to potentially accommodate them, or even if you yourself are gone, like how can we utilize just online giving and be consistent? So whoever is like doing your communications, your SVA chapter, and or if that falls on somebody who's a full-timer, how do we build like a content plan for them? So the advantages of the hybrid fundraising, so flexibility and accommodating all preferences, you have more flexible sponsorship levels. So what I can tell you is the example I gave with the military gala and ball, we would do tiered fundraising. So we would always do like red, white, and blue, gold, platinum. So we'd have these 5 tiered packaging like fundraising. So if for $500 you get ad space in our pamphlet, or if you're $1,000, or I think like our platinum at one point we changed it to like gift a veteran ticket. So like whatever the ticket price was, or if we had got tickets for the Cavs or something like that, we would use that money, and then they would be able to like go forward and do good things, right? So these tiers of fundraising is a great way as you're reaching out to the community, because not everyone, like I've said prior, like is going to be a Fortune 500 who's going to be like, take my money, right? So you're going to have to build that relationship, have some materials to present to them in the pitch deck that we've described earlier. Balancing both the physical interaction and the convenience. You've got expanded reach, as well as keeping attendees engaged more easily. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little Zoom fatigued out, or like in general, I think most of us are. So again, keeping in mind, yes, it might be a lower cost, but what can we do at a reasonable cost and with the resources we have on our individual campuses? So benefits of in-person events, I think we all can figure this out. Just as for anyone who went to the MVP session earlier this morning, it's very cathartic when like you can do an event with veterans, right, as a group, and the next thing you know, therapy happens. So in this event, applying that context, when you do in-person events, you're going to meet people. You're going to have that immediate, maybe not so immediate, I've met some people, I'm like, no. But you might have that connection that solidifies that relationship moving forward. It gives you an opportunity to invite people from across the community to these events that otherwise may never interact with one another, which I think is, in general, as service members and veterans, we are used to having the diversity in culture, whereas some of our folks that we sit in class with are like, oh, you don't even know, right? So taking what lessons we've learned and having these in-person events where you can provide the opportunity for attendees to work and see you firsthand is going to really help the overall arching goals of your individual SVA chapters. All right, so 5 strategies to deliver a successful fundraiser. All right, so I love this one. Fear of missing out. FOMO, fear of missing out. It happens all the time, right? So you want to move people to action. Consider how you can generate motivating by motion or by featuring experiences that attendees aren't likely going to get again. Like we have an annual military ball, great, but hey, we're doing this really great event where we got guest speaker from local community, and you invite and work with academic departments to provide extra credit for attendance. That's a cool thing. Now you're building these relationships, and you can have some sort of subtle, hey, maybe you meet new veterans, you help veterans, further identify, hey, I am a veteran, I kind of want to get involved, and it will build the relationship as you're asking for donations as well. We talked about breaking things into bite-sized content, so shorter attention spans are a bit problematic for event organizers nowadays. So chunking your content together into these quick little schemas or quick little snippets will help you maintain your attendees' attention. So successful nonprofits in this instance are repackaging a lot of event programs, both in person and digital. So for anyone who attended the digital SVA conference last year, think about how there are similarities with the run of show and program. So for most of you, it's the first time. If you've gone to the virtual, awesome. Very different experience. All right, integrating with digital and also being tactile, if you shall. So the more senses you can engage, the more your attendees will find experience. So the more I throw M&Ms at you, the more like you're going to remember me as the M&M lady, right? How do you engage with your audience? So think about that when you're having these events and you're asking folks for more information about this, or to give them your information to solicit them for donations. Like, how often are you going to do that? Don't do it too often, right? Do it when it's necessary. What are the best events to do that? Are they virtual ones? Do we send it to everybody? Do we segment that audience? Creating community or collaborative element. So, we're driven by social connection. We all know this in a general sense from camaraderie during service. We enjoy it as an SVA chapter leader and as a member. And this is, again, going to significantly increase your engagement, even when you have to move, say, forcefully to a purely digital environment. So keeping these things in context. All right, you can do hybrid auctions. So this is a thing. I have never done a hybrid auction. I will tell you firsthand, but I spoke to a good friend of mine who does fundraising, and she does this all as a consultant, and she was like, this is the next big thing that is on the rise. So working with all the organizations I've cited previously, would be an excellent way to get attendees participating together. So having a hybrid auction where you are having both in-person folks bidding on things and then having this, say, segue an hour prior, the day before, anyone who has said, I'm going to attend virtually, can open up and start the bidding. And that's something that can be done. I would work with, say, some of your IT or tech folks, say, someone in the business department. I'm sure there's plenty of academic ways you could work this in to get students to build it also as credit for maybe their coursework. All right, so to translate all of this potential back into real funds, we need to make sure that we have an effective fundraising campaign plan. So we've already hit on foundation. Here's what we need to know as chapter leaders. Here's the terms and tech. And now we're at the point where we need to make sure that we have a plan that as we continue on with our education, as we leave our SVA chapters and maybe graduate to the American Legion or another VSO, we can have this be a legacy piece and a starting block. Nobody should be starting from scratch. You may be doing it now, but you are building something so that your predecessors will have some blueprint to work off of. All right. Okay. Anyone a Pinky in the Brain fan? Yeah, all right. So what are we going to do tonight, Brain? The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try and take over the world. As veterans, we're overachievers by some default. We are SVA folks. We're here, and we're ready to tackle anything that comes in front of us, right? So having a plan, like many other things, creating your case for support is going to be vital. We've talked about the action plan. We've talked about who's your A team. Having your M&Ms, your mission, and your messaging. So these are all, of course, questions that you want to have answered in your strategic plan. And this doesn't have to be 25 pages. It doesn't have to be super long. It just needs to be some formal document that you can always go back to and say, hey, okay, this worked. So when we do an after-action report, you can say, okay, we tried this. It didn't work. But this worked really well. We should put more resources into this next year or quarterly or whatever you decide. And that, again, is going to be based on what kind of support element you have at your individual chapters. So, what's the problem you're addressing? Why are you addressing it? How can we get the donor involved? So that would be, say, the laundry list of events that you've thought of. And you don't have to commit to every one of them. They could just be a laundry list, and then you find out which ones are more applicable or you can, garner support on campus to achieve. So first steps, identifying those key supporters and prospectors. So you've got your A team, we've talked about this, champions of your network, listen to your potential donors. So this is super important. So having a hyper-targeted communications in your campaign, what this looks like is, here's my laundry list of donors. Start breaking them down. These are veteran-affiliated organizations. These are academic. And what you'll start finding is it's going to create this web. And you will notice how your messaging will change for each of those segments, because you don't want to send the same messaging to a foundation that you would send to, something of a handout you would provide to someone who's just, walking past your tabled event, right? So this is a really great way to both segment your audiences, personalize those messages that allow you to deliver more compelling messages, and then have it documented. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been in organizations where they're like, oh, well, we did this really cool thing. I'm like, oh, great, let me see. And they're like, oh, we did this really great thing. And I'm like, can I see it? And they're just like, oh, but it's on social media. I go, well, is it in a report or like a plan somewhere? Oh, no, we just did it. I love your initiative, but how am I going to reduplicate it? How do I know what works or what didn't work? So your campaign setup, anytime you're going to do any fundraising campaigns, outreach, you want to have a start date and an end date. I typically will start my fundraising in January, and if let me give you an example. If my 5K run that I'm putting on is in July, I'm going to start the preliminary work now. By March, I will have had all of my emails distributed. I will have had like kind of these phone tree conversations with people on my A team to say, hey, we got to call these people, we got to follow up. So that means in between, this February, March timeframe, I want to make sure that I have all the proper documentation that, gives me the credibility as the student veteran asking for the funds as an individual, or if you go and, tackle it as a group, do a little community walk around, whatever works. You just want to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. Now, having a fundraising goal. I always tell folks that you have a public, you have an internal, and you have an external goal. Like you tell people like, hey, this is gonna meet with a little bit of buffer, a little bit of padding, our NatCon travel goals. So this is an incredibly large number, and I don't think any of you need $50,000 to come here. But if your publicized goal is $50,000, you may have an internal stretch goal of $75,000. And what that looks like is, you may advertise that you have a certain marker. You may use very arbitrary, plain language to say, hey, we're raising a certain event. We need to get to a certain point, and that's when you use FOMO, that, missing out on an opportunity to support veterans, and you can create that time hack of like, oh, persistency. So as you get closer, the messaging increases. So folks naturally kind of feel this anxiety, like, oh, that's happening today. It's kind of like when you get reminders on your phone, or if any of you have an Outlook email, and your Outlook email is telling you have a meeting 24 hours from now, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't need this. And then it reminds you on the hour of the hour until you change your settings. Just a me problem? Okay. All right. So donor acquisition goals. So deciding how many new donors you're looking to acquire. So when you're listing these things out and you're looking at this, this net that you're casting into your community, who is going to be the most likely to support you? These are kind of the maybes. So again, how do you segment folks that are going to be in your corner? Who's going to be able to help you the easiest? Soft launch. So a lot of people are like, we're going to roll out everything now, tomorrow, today. They're already thinking like 2 years down the road. Like sometimes a soft launch is okay. So deciding when and how you're going to contact, say, some initial supporters to start kind of like talking about it. This is very common in peer-to-peer fundraising. So if I'm on Facebook, for example, and I say, hey, I want to raise some money for my SVA chapter, and we've gone through Facebook and we've been able to do whatever, or attach it to an individual account, which again, getting into Facebook is its own thing. If you've navigated that process, or you've decided to elect into a platform to do that, have some of these key people make the donations to get it started, or they share it onto their social media and network. And the next thing you know, you've got family and friends who are like, oh, I know Johnny's doing this, or I know Ashley's doing that. Therefore, I'll donate like $25. Next thing you know, individually, you've got $250, and 6 or 7 people share it, and maybe they range in and bring in some money, and next thing you know, you've got like a grand or two. And that's something to think about as you're doing your soft launch, how you're going to personalize that outreach and let people drum up that support. Communication channels, determine what social media platforms you want to use. Are you going to use the email? Is there something else in your campus homepage? If you went to do all of your registration for classes, that could be an option for you as well. Communications calendar. So we talked a little bit about content, why having a content calendar is important. So in January, I know I need to have all of my support documents done. So say that's an infographic, that's my donation letter, or I need to set time, just basic project management. I need to set these goals in order to make sure and stay on top of offices that are out of my control to make sure I have what I need to move forward to my next step in March. So having this communications calendar with your team and say, hey, Andrew, you're gonna do this portion. You're gonna control the social media. Here's the messaging that we want. Or, whoever else. And then you can delegate as needed. assets. So again, that's your content, your materials, what you're going to have, visuals, impact stories. If you're going to do a video, you're going to do a TikTok, do an obnoxious dance, whatever makes you happy. There are a lot of ways to garner attention in our digital world. Campaign milestones, so creating a sense of urgency with people. So just as you would as you're leading up to that hard deadline. For instance, you could broadcast the deadline down the road, or you could have match campaign announcements. So, hey, we're getting down to the deadline. If you donate X, we have such and such who sponsored us who will donate $5 for every whatever. All right, celebrations. This is really important, and a lot of people miss this step with their donors, is they ask for money and they never talk to them again. Ouch. It just makes me feel bad. Like, I wouldn't want to donate back somewhere if they just were like, here's my money, and then you just like, you do one of those. So establishing incentives or ways to recognize donors, funders, and sponsors, or like a leaderboard on a website can be done. I've seen it. It looks wonderful, and it's a great way to promote that fear of missing out or opportunity to give back and promote your deadline or any other sparked creative initiatives that you have. So having a website, or again having a space on your military service center website, having just kind of again these unique fundraising pages on whatever platform you've decided, a solid donor plan and a donor retention strategy. So super important. You want to make sure that you have maybe a monthly giving plan, and these are all different examples as to what could work for your individual chapter. By no means do you have to do all of them. Just do what is within your capabilities and your reach. So email campaigns, bequests, you have online campaigns, major donation solicitation, monthly giving program. So we talked about earlier, December, the last 3 days, December is a giving month. So if you're gonna plan for a Giving Tuesday type of event surrounded by Veterans Day or National Military Families Month or Caregivers Month, whatever you wanna do, note that this is a way that you can start that, and you would start at September, October. So thinking about the time ranges. All right, so finally, just making sure that you have board support from any of, I would say primarily your academia, and if you do solicit and get corporate and major donors, making sure that you have contacts with these folks to continue to build relationships long after you've left SVA and continued on with your careers. Matching campaigns, brainstorming any corporate partners and large donors, that kind of can come as an after action report too. It's what worked, who wasn't interested, who do we lean on a little bit more? Or, hey, maybe we've asked too much from this individual, let's lay off for a little bit. Knowing what technology is available to you, supplemental documents, and then just making your way down this list, you'll be in great shape. And again, this doesn't have to be super long. You can do this in bullet format. You can type out a few paragraphs. You can attach your standard operating procedures or attach it to your bylaws or whatever you have for your chapter. This is a great way to constantly have some sort of plan in place so you can sustain your chapter all year long. So you're not struggling the last 2 months, and the next thing you know, oh no, the rates are gone, or now I have to go pay for a larger hotel. So doing, again, some of that work up front and also on the back end to see what has worked if you've had SVA chapter folks who have been here and done that, or for folks this is your first time. All right, so in conclusion, we have talked about the fundraising climate. We've talked about some terms. We've talked about the future is potentially hybrid, and I don't see it going anywhere in the foreseeable future. How do we create and work with our institutions to leverage their existing platforms without having to always go to platforms that take I would say sometimes a generous percentage, and then creating a plan that goes in your standard operating procedures book and just general SVA membership mission and whatnot. Okay. So again, major takeaways. We've pretty much hit on all of my favorite things. I have been doing this for a while. I've tried my best to show you some of the follies that I've had and also some of the wins. If you have any questions, I don't want to hold you up. I know that the other session is going to be starting here shortly, or end of session, or end of general session, or closing session. Words. I've said a lot of words for all of you. So, any questions at this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fundraising Ideas, what would you say in the past has raised the most amount of money in the shortest
Okay. So the question is,
T-shirts, that kind of thing.
okay, so the question is, which fundraising events have been the most lucrative?
Yes.
So personally, with my chapter and my community at large, the galas and the military balls were a big hit. It brought together a lot of folks who were like, man, I haven't been to one of these for a while. Or it brought in our Legion or VFW locals who said, oh my gosh, this is great. We can do your color guard, to the catering giving us extreme discounts, to silent auctions, to raffles. That has been one of the most successful events I've done. It does take more planning and a lot more like initiative. I would say if you're gonna do a military ball, everyone wants to do it in November, but depending on where you live, I will say if I'm in DC and I'm trying to do something in November, wrong. There's just so many bigger organizations, it wouldn't be worth the time. So we would always have our military ball in October. We would do it in October, and then we would, of course, preemptively celebrate the Marine's birthday. And we would have all these fun, cool things that we would do, bring in some of the traditions, but also some of the alma mater. So military balls were probably number one. We would also do like 5K walks and runs. So we would partner up with suicidal like awareness coalitions, any local nonprofits that were already doing amazing work and they wanted to come in, and we would like split events. So we would split that money with them for whatever we raised. And then I would say like going to some of the like food eateries, those are probably the simplest things we would do. We had a Chipotle like right off of campus that everyone went to. And you weren't allowed to stand inside and solicit, but what we were able to do is stand on the corners where they couldn't see us, and we would hand out these flyers and be like, hey, if you give them this flyer, hey, you going to Chipotle? Hey, you going to Chipotle? And we would just hand them these flyers and like, you go in. We made like $4,000 from like 4 hours. It was ridiculous. That's how popular this Chipotle was. You can tell there wasn't a lot of eating options at my university. So, on a Tuesday, Thursday night, that was an option. So looking into some of the eateries that you might already have on your campus, or, partnering up with your catering, probably org, like I think it was like, it started with an A. Amric? I don't know. It was one of those, but we were able to partner with them and get some like discounts and or for just the whole plethora of events. So we just had a working partnership. So as SVA chapter members, whether you're working with your advisor, you are the advisor, or you're just the novice student, this is my first time here, this is a lot, she's saying so many things, I gotta do what now? Don't get overwhelmed. Do what you can with the resources and the chapter that you have. So I hope that helps, but those are my top three. My top three. Yes?
Is there any way you can share your PowerPoint with us?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so much information.
Yes.
I only have so much paper.
Oh, yes. You're a digital man, got it.
I'm a digital.
Well, if anyone is interested, we'll go ahead and we'll exchange, and I'll be happy to send it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for your time. If anyone wants some M&Ms, please. I literally bought so many of them. I preemptively thought my 9 a.m. session would want more sugar to wake up, and I was incorrect. I was grossly incorrect. So, hi.